Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger famously said, the first £100,000 is the hardest. And in today's video, we're going to be seeing just how true that is. Now, there are a number of videos on YouTube discussing this topic, but this is going to be slightly different because we're going to be using my actual portfolio. We're going to be seeing what that portfolio pays me every single year. And we're also going to be taking a look at what that portfolio will pay me once it gets to £100,000 if everything stays the same. So the current value of my portfolio is sitting at £4,080.27p, but we need to get that to £100,000. So every single stock that I hold, and you'll be able to see everything in a minute, is going to be times by 24.5. So we're going to be having a look at the dividends, the stock, and the potential growth of everything that we have to see if once we get to £100,000, it's going to make a huge difference to my life. Fingers crossed it will. So let's get straight into it. Now, firstly, bit of a new setup for the YouTube videos. Let me know how you're thinking about that, if you like it, if you want me back over there, if you prefer it here with the desk. So this is the smaller holdings in the account that you can see right now. So everything from BT here down to wherever we got up down to Diageo. So values of £7 all the way through to about £60 there. Now you'll also be able to see the dividend yield there in the percentage column and the total dividend that I receive every year due to the amount that I've got in there, given the dividend yield, etc., etc. Now, what we're going to be showing you is how much those holdings would need to be in order to crack £100,000. Now, do bear in mind that this is only the smaller holdings in the portfolio. We're going to be looking at the mid-tier and then the larger ones in a little bit to see how they stack up. But let's now times everything by 24.5 to see how we're looking. So if we just take, let's have a look at Aviva here. So if you can see Aviva here. So the current value, the current holding I have in Aviva is £12.40p. But in the £100,000 version of my portfolio, that Aviva holding actually shoots up to £303.80p. The total annual dividend currently is sitting at 72p, but in the £100,000 portfolio, that gets a nice little boost to £17.64p. So as you can see, I've done that with every holding there, and feel free to pause the video and take a look at things, double check numbers, let me know if I'm wrong. But this is how we're looking. So these are the smaller holdings in the account at the minute, and if we were to go for that £100,000, this is where they'd need to be at. Now, as we're looking down there, it's actually really interesting to see because I've not actually put all the numbers like this into a spreadsheet, and it took me a while to do it, but just going through it and seeing the value that I have in each and the total annual dividend that I'm receiving from each is actually really interesting. And it's also good to know what it would be if it was a £100,000 portfolio, but just to have that information in front of me, just because of this video, that's really handy to have. So that's all the information there. So we have Diageo, I think, goes from a £59.74p holding all the way up to a £1,463.63p holding. And that goes from paying me £2.32p a year up to £56.84p a year. So that's really interesting. Now, let's move on to the mid-tier holdings. So, as we jump on, we can see we've got Legal & General, VUSA, HSBC, National Grid, United Utilities, and B&A Systems there. So that's our sort of mid-tier holding. So, as you can see, the current value in the account, so Legal & General is £63, VUSA 82, HSBC 114, as is National Grid. United Utilities is £129.25p, and B&A Systems is £154.16p. Now, As we times this by 24.5, you can see that the B&A Systems there has gone from £154 up to £3,776.92. It's only currently paying a dividend here of 1.74%. So my annual dividend for B&A Systems, BAE Systems, is £2.68 here. And in the £100,000 version of this portfolio, once it's at 3,700, it pays me £65.66. Now, there are a few standouts here. So if we look at United Utilities, we're getting paid £140 per year, and that's just because the dividend yield of United Utilities is currently sitting quite a bit above BAE Systems there. Another one we should look at is Legal and General. So in the £100,000 version of the portfolio, we go from £63 up to £1,555, and that pays us 8.59%, giving us an annual dividend here of £133. So way more than BAE Systems does, even though we've got so much more into it. So yeah, it's a really interesting breakdown there of the mid-tiers. In a minute, we're going to get onto the bit. You know what? Let's just crack on and do that now. So again, pause it, double check the numbers if you want, but now let's move on to the whales in the account, or the whales in my account. So we're going to go and have a look now at BP, GSK, Unilever, British American Tobacco, Tesco, and Rio Tinto. Now, there is one stock that I've left off, which is the largest holding in the account, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. So as you can see, these numbers really are starting to stack up now, especially Rio Tinto there at the bottom. So we currently have a £262.74 holding in Rio Tinto, but in the 100k version of the portfolio, that jumps up to £6,437. And it also pays us a 7% dividend. So our current annual dividend from Rio Tinto is about £18.52, but it jumps up to £453.74 in the £100,000 version of the portfolio. So that's a lot of money, especially from one stock. So it's, again, really, really interesting to see. Now, interestingly, there's Unilever there that has a 3% dividend, 3.19%. Currently paying us out at £7.43 in the actual portfolio that I have, and it jumps up to £182. But when you're comparing that now with Rio Tinto, it's like, oh, it's nothing. But it is interesting to see, and the only reason I've got this, like, I should have done this ages ago, of course I should, this spreadsheet here and all these numbers is because I was doing this video, but it's actually a really nice breakdown of everything in there. Now, the big one. So the S&P 500. This is my largest holding by far in my actual portfolio. So let's take a look at that now. So the S&P 500, ticker symbol VUAG, is my largest holding, and I currently have £1,745 in the S&P 500. In the £100,000 version of my portfolio, that would equate to £42,745. Now, this doesn't have any dividends, but it is, a growth stock, the S&P 500. So past performance isn't an indicator of future performance, but since inception, the S&P 500 has averaged about 10% a year. So in the £100,000 version of the portfolio, all of our dividends combined get us £2,685.69, which is quite nice. But the growth of the S&P 500, and that's not to mention any of the growth in the dividend stocks, but we're just counting the dividends from them, is £4,274. So when we add these together, we get a total of £6,960.28 for the £100,000 version of our portfolio. Now, is that making a difference to me? Undeniably, yes. So I think that's why they say 100,000, everything changes, everything changes after £100,000, because out of nowhere, in my sleep, I'm able to generate an additional £7,000 of income. Now, the mortgage payment, I don't mind telling you guys, the mortgage payment is about £750 on the house, and which is reasonably good. I have friends in London and Wimbledon who would do unspeakable things for a mortgage payment of £750. So that, you know, that's about £9,000 a year for a mortgage payment there. So this is taking care of most of that. But in reality, if I had this £100,000 portfolio, that was gaining me £7,000 of wealth every year, I wouldn't touch it. I'd just leave it in there, let it grow, let it compound, and build and build and build and build. But yeah, that is why they say things get easier after £100,000. Because looking at my own portfolio, if we enlarge it so it is at £100,000, it would gain me an additional £7,000 a year. So that is a large chunk of money. Now, talking of huge chunks of money, the first 10% of this £100,000 portfolio I actually stumbled into. Now, it's a very crazy story. A huge slice of luck is involved in this, but not all luck. Now, if you want to know what that is, how I stumbled into all of that money, then I will leave that video linked right there. Let me know what you thought of this video, of the new setup, of the desk. If you want me to be back over there or you prefer this, I'd love to know. But yeah, they're all the numbers. God, one day I will get that £100,000 portfolio. Peace.